Good morning, children. Today again we shall continue with the chapter Electoral Politics. Today we will start with the heading, Is it good to have political competition? Elections are thus all about political competition. This competition takes various forms. The most obvious form is the competition among political parties. What competition do they have? The competition of coming to power, the competition of winning the elections and coming to power. At the constituency level, it takes the form of competition among several candidates. If there is no competition, elections will become pointless. But is it good to have political competition? Clearly, an electoral competition has many demerits. It creates a sense of disunity and factionalism in every locality. Factionalism means the people are divided into separate groups. Faction means a group of people. So it develops the concept of disunity and creates factionalism in society, in every locality. That means the people are separated in the form of different groups. You would have heard of people complaining of party politics in your locality. Different political parties and leaders often level allegations against one another. Allegations means they keep blaming one another for different reasons. Parties and candidates often use dirty tricks to win elections. This is a demerit of lot of competition among political parties. If the competition is healthy, then there is no problem. But the case is that in order to win the elections, in order to come to power, many at times this competition takes the shape of unhealthy competition during elections. Parties and candidates often use dirty tricks to win elections. Some people say that this pressure to win electoral fights does not allow sensible long-term policies to be formulated. Some good people who may wish to serve the country do not enter this arena. They don't enter politics. There are many people who wish to serve the country, but they find different ways and means to serve their country. They don't want to enter politics, because when you enter politics, all moral values, all your principles, they are kept aside. And in order to win the elections, in order to be in power, people usually do everything possible, whether it is lawful or unlawful. They do not like the idea of being dragged into unhealthy competition. Our constitution makers were aware of these problems. Yet they opted for free competition in elections as the way to select our future leaders. They did so because this system works better in the long run. In an ideal world, all political leaders know what is good for the people and are motivated only by a desire to serve them. Political competition is not necessary in such an ideal world. But that is not what happens in real life. That means all political leaders know what they are bound to do, what they should do to fulfill the wishes of the people, how they can serve their people. They know everything. But this is an ideal picture. In reality, they don't fulfill the wishes of the people. Political leaders all over the world, like all other professionals, are motivated by a desire to advance their political careers. That means they want to progress more and more. If they are the members of the cabinet of the state ministers, then in the next elections they would prefer to be at the central level. So they want to grow professionally. They want to acquire better and better positions professionally, as other professionals do in other occupations. Similarly, they also want to get better and better place in politics. They want to remain in power or get power and positions for themselves. They may wish to serve the people as well, but it is risky to depend entirely on their sense of duty. Besides, even when they wish to serve the people, they may not know what is required to do so, or their ideas may not match what the people really want. That it means that it is not that the political leaders don't want to serve the country, they only want power and position. No, it is not that. But many a times it is seen that their ideas don't match with the wishes of the people, and they really don't know how to make the people happy, how to fulfill the wishes of the countrymen. How do we deal with this real life situation? One way is to try and improve the knowledge and character of political leaders. How can we improve this situation? How can we create such political leaders who can fulfill the wishes of the people, who can understand the people and do what the citizens want them to do? One way is to try and improve the knowledge and character of political leaders. The other and more realistic way is to set up a system where political leaders are rewarded for serving the people and punished for not doing so. If reward and punishment is given, then it will be a good motivation for the political leaders. In order to get a good reward, they will always they will make efforts to do things which are well for the welfare of the citizens, and if they will not do so, they will be punished. Who decides this reward or punishment? Now, this is again a very genuine question. Who will punish them or who will reward them? Who is going to decide all this? This is what electoral competition does. Regular electoral competition provides incentive to political parties and leaders. Incentives, different kinds of motivation. Regular electoral competition provides incentives to political parties and leaders. They know that if they raise issues that people want to be raised, their popularity and chances of victory will increase in the next elections. So here electoral competition means more and more chances of winning in the elections. The candidates who will stand in the elections, they will know very well that if they will fulfill the wishes of the people, if they will keep the citizens happy, then there are going to be more chances of winning the elections this time also and every year. They will be in power every year. But if they fail to satisfy the voters with their work, they will not be able to win again. So this is their punishment. The reward is they will be chosen as people's representatives again and again. They will win the elections again and again and be in power. And the punishment is that the voters will not vote for them and they will not be chosen again. So if a political party is motivated only by desire to be in power, even then it will be forced to serve the people. Even if they want to be in power, even if they have the desire to have lot of power in their hands, still they will work to serve the people, because they will know very well that if they want to be in power, they have to keep the people happy, because the people have voted for them. The people have chosen them as their representatives, and if they will not keep the citizens happy, then next time they will not be in power at all. This is a bit like the way market works. Even if a shopkeeper is interested only in his profit, he is forced to give good service to the customers. If he does not, the customer will go to some other shop. So same is the thing. Competition is everywhere, whether it is in politics or it is in the market. Similarly, political competition may cause divisions and some ugliness, but it finally helps to force political parties and leaders to serve the people. In spite of all the problems inside it, in spite of the ugliness present there, some difficulties present there, still the leaders and political parties work to serve the people, because only then the people are going to keep them in power. What is our system of elections? Can we say that Indian elections are democratic? To answer this question, let us take a look at how elections are held in India. Lok Sabha and Vidhan Sabha, that is assembly elections, are held regularly after every 5 years. After 5 years, the term of all the elected representatives comes to an end. The Lok Sabha or Vidhan Sabha stands dissolved after 5 years. Elections are held in all constituencies at the same time, either on the same day or within a few days. This is called a general election. Sometimes election is held only for one constituency to fill the vacancy caused by death or resignation of a member. This is called a by-election. In this chapter, we will focus on general election. So there are two types of elections. One is general election, which is held after every 5 years, and another is by-election, which can be held even before 5 years term if the member has died or he has resigned due to some circumstances. Electoral constituencies. You read about the people of Haryana electing 90 MLAs. You may have wondered how they did that. Did every person in Haryana vote for all the 90 MLAs? You perhaps know that this is not the case. In our country, we follow an area-based system of representation. The country is divided into different areas for purpose of elections. These areas are called electoral constituencies. Now children, all these things can come in multiple choice questions. So you should know the term that when the whole country is divided on the basis of area, they are divided into areas based on the system of representation. It is called as constituency. These areas are called electoral constituencies. The voters who live in an area elect one representative. For Lok Sabha elections, the country is divided into 543 constituencies, 543 separate areas. The representative elected from each constituency is called a member of parliament or an MP. One of the features of a democratic election is that every vote should have equal value. We have read this term many a times. One vote, one value. Every vote has equal importance, equal value. That is why our constitution requires that each constituency should have a roughly equal population living within it. Equal population, why? Because if the population will be very less, then a particular candidate representing that constituency will get few votes because of less population. Whereas if a constituency has a very large population, then there he will get more votes because of more population. So generally it is seen that every constituency should have roughly equal population so that there is no such discrepancy. Similarly, each state is divided into a specific number of assembly constituencies. In this case, the elected representative is called Member of Legislative Assembly or an MLA. You should know all these terms, MP and MLA. Who is an MP? The representative elected from each constituency is the Member of Parliament or an MP. Who is an MLA? Each state is divided into specific number of assembly constituencies, and the elected representative of each of these assembly constituencies is called an MLA. Each parliamentary constituency has within it several assembly constituencies. The same principle applies for panchayat and municipal elections. Each village or town is divided into several wards that are like constituencies. So in multiple choice question, this can also be asked, that each village or town is divided into several, then you can have 4 options, and the correct option is ward. Each ward elects one member of the village or the urban local body. Sometimes These constituencies are counted as seats. For each constituency represents one seat in the assembly. When we say that Lok Dal won 60 seats in Haryana, it means that candidates of Lok Dal won in 60 assembly constituencies in the state, and thus Lok Dal had 60 MLAs in the state assembly. Now in future, whenever elections will be held, if you will listen to the news, you will very frequently hear to these terms: constituency, seats. So you know now what is the meaning of a constituency, what is the meaning of the term seat. Reserved constituency. Our constitution entitles every citizen to elect her or his representative and to be elected as a representative. That means any citizen can stand in election. I can also stand in the election. You can also, when you grow up, you can also stand in the election. This freedom has been given by our constitution to every citizen. The constitution makers, however, were worried that in an open electoral competition, certain weaker sections may not stand a good chance to get elected to the Lok Sabha and the state legislative assemblies. It was seen that the weaker sections of the society, the minorities in the society, they did not get equal chance, equal opportunity to get elected in the Lok Sabha and in the state legislative assemblies. They may not have the required resources, education and contacts to contest and win elections against others. Those who are influential and resourceful may prevent them from winning elections. So it was seen that the minorities or the backward classes, they did not get the same opportunity to contest elections, and those who were privileged classes, influential people in the society, those who were resourceful, they had a lot of money, they stood in the elections, and others, the minorities, were deprived. If that happens, our parliament and assemblies would be deprived of the voice of a significant section of our population. Which section of population we are talking about? The minorities, the backward classes. That would make our democracy less representative and less democratic. If this was allowed to be done, that only the influential people or only the resourceful people, the educated people, the powerful people in the society, only they could be the members of the Lok Sabha or state legislative assemblies, and the minorities, the backward classes, they were deprived, then this would be unjust as far as democracy is concerned, and this would lead to less representation, and it would not be called a truly democratic kind of a representation, because in democracy every citizen is given equal rights and equal opportunities. So the makers of our constitution thought of a special system of reserved constituencies for the weaker sections. Now a solution was found for this problem. Makers of our constitution thought of a special system of reserved constituencies for the weaker sections. Some constituencies are reserved for people who belong to the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. So this was the solution. For scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, there are reserved seats in the constituencies. In a scheduled caste reserved constituency, only someone who belongs to the scheduled caste can stand for election. Similarly, only those belonging to the scheduled tribes can contest an election from a constituency reserved for scheduled tribe. Currently, in a Lok Sabha, 84 seats are reserved for scheduled castes and 47 for scheduled tribes. This number is in proportion to their share in the total population. So this kind of reservation was done so that scheduled caste and scheduled tribes also get an opportunity to stand in the elections. They are not deprived of representing themselves in the Lok Sabha or state legislative assemblies. Thus, the reserved seats for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes do not take away the legitimate share of any other social group. This system of reservation was extended later to other weaker sections at the district and local level. In many states, seats in rural and urban local bodies are now reserved for other backward classes, that is OBCs, as well. However, the proportion of seats reserved varies from state to state. Similarly, one third of the seats are reserved in rural and urban local bodies for women candidates. So, not only this reservation was done for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, but OBCs were also given this reservation. This opportunity was given to them also, and furthermore, women were also given a chance to represent themselves. One third of the seats are reserved in rural and urban local bodies for women to represent themselves. So now we have seen that it was like olden days. It is no more restricted to the privileged section of the society or to the influential people in the society. The minorities, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, OBCs and women have equal opportunity, equal chance to represent themselves. Voters list. Once the constituencies are decided, the next step is to decide who can and who cannot vote. Very simple. I think you all know any person who is 18 years of age or above can vote, others cannot. This is called universal adult franchise. This decision cannot be left to anyone till the last day. In a democratic election, the list of those who are eligible to vote is prepared much before the election and given to everyone. Now, as I told previously, when the next elections will be held, then you will see, because you are still too young to vote, so you can observe at your home, your parents will go for voting, maybe your grandparents are also living with you, they can also go for voting. So you will see that when the voter list is made, a slip comes to your house. The people who are given this duty of distributing the slips to the citizens of the country, they go from door to door, they go to every house and they give a slip. That slip is very important because when you go for voting, you have to carry that slip along with you. In a democratic election, the list of those who are eligible to vote is prepared much before the election and given to everyone. This list is officially called the electoral roll. This is very important. This list, the list telling who can vote and who cannot, the names of all those who can vote is mentioned in this list, and this list is called electoral roll and is commonly known as voters list. The term for a common man is voters list. This is an important step, for it is linked to the first condition of a democratic election. Everyone should get an equal opportunity to choose representatives. In chapter 1, we read about the principle of universal adult franchise. I told this to you just now. In practice, it means that everyone should have one vote and each vote should have equal value. No one should be denied the right to vote without a good reason. Different citizens differ from one another in many ways. Some are rich, some are poor, some are highly educated, some are not so educated or not educated at all. Some are kind, others are not so kind, but all of them are human beings with their own needs and views. That is why all of them deserve to have an equal say in decisions that affect them. That means I have the right to choose my representative, you have the right to choose your representative, irrespective of caste, creed, color, religion, education, whether a person is rich or not, he is poor or not, he lives in a city, he lives in a village, irrespective of all these things. Every person has the right to vote and each vote has equal value. In our country, All the citizens aged 18 years and above can vote in an election. Every citizen has the right to vote regardless of his or her caste, religion, or gender. Some criminals and persons with unsound mind can be denied the right to vote, but only in rare situations. It is the responsibility of the government to get the names of all the eligible voters put on the voters list. As new persons attain voting age, names are added to the voters list. Like when you will become 18 years of age, your names will also be added in the voters list. Names of those who move out of a place or those who are dead are deleted. A complete revision of the list takes place every 5 years. This is done to ensure that it remains up to date. In the last few years, a new system of election photo identity card has been introduced. The government has tried to give this card to every person on the voters list. The voters are required to carry this card when they go out to vote. It is called voter ID. Today you can do one thing, you can ask your parents if they can show you their voter ID. You will see that it is a card and it has the photograph of your mother, will have her photograph, your father will have his photograph. So you can just see how that voter ID card looks like. The voters are required to carry this card when they go out to vote so that no one can vote for someone else. This helps in preventing cheating. This helps in preventing voting in a false manner. Like when I will show my voter ID card, only then I will be allowed to vote. Otherwise anybody can say that I am such and such person and he can vote. So in order to avoid fraud, in order to avoid cheating, this system has been implemented. But the card is not yet compulsory for voting. For voting, the voters can show many other proofs of identity like the ration card or the driving license. Driving license is also your ID, ration card is also your ID, voter identity card is obviously your ID. So you can use any of these three to show that you are a genuine person, you are not somebody else. So this is the way how the process of elections begin. We are reading something very interesting. I suppose you also must be finding it very interesting. It is increasing your knowledge. When you will vote yourself, when you will attain 18 years of age and you will go for voting, you will see that your name is in the voters list. Your voter identity card will be made. You will carry the card when you will go for voting, etc., etc. So in the next class we will start with a new heading, nomination of candidates. That's all for today, children. Thank you.